Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Michael, and this is a place where we talk about all things photography. This week, I want to talk about something that I learned on a recent trip to Disney World, and that's specifically related to my ideal focal length. I guess you could call it a desert island focal length. If I could only take one lens, if I only have one lens, what would it be? I've said for the longest time that that would be 35 millimeter, but it turns out that maybe that's not actually what I would choose. So my family and I went to Disney World for the second time in the past year or so, 2 years. It's been 2 years. And each time I took one camera with one lens, and I had an objective, a very simple objective. Can it fit in a tiny little bag like this, a little fanny pack or messenger bag, whatever, something like this that I can just wear around my body, carry it with me, and not take up too much space. And my reason for that was simple. I have 4 kids, and I'm going to be lugging around a bunch of stuff, and I don't want to carry around too much gear. So what would I choose if I could only take one bag with one camera and one lens? Well, the first time that we went, and I should say this too, like, I know that it's a treat for people to go to Disney. In our case, it just so happened to work out. We haven't been in like 8 years, so this is the first time that we've done it in a while, and we probably won't do it again for several years until our kids get a little bit older. That said, I chose to take one camera with me the first time, which was this guy right here, the Ricoh GR IIIx. This is such a fun little point and shoot camera, which ended up being kind of a perfect companion for that trip. Why I chose this camera in particular is because of its size and its form factor, and initially because it met the requirements of being able to easily fit inside something this size. But the next time we went, I took a different camera setup, which is actually the one that I'm filming this on right here, which is the Lumix S9, and I took one lens with that one too, which is the 40mm f2 by TTArtisan. And what I realized when I was going through those images is that both times, rather unintentionally, I chose a focal length that is basically right at 40mm. And that started having me think about my own history. Like, when I first got an M camera, the first lens I had was the Voigtlander 40mm 1.4 Nocton multi-coated. And I actually bought that lens before I bought the Leica M240. And there's just something about the 40mm focal length that I think is maybe possibly a perfect compromise lens between 35 and 50, or maybe it's just the perfect lens altogether. So today I want to just look at these 2 different trips that we took with 2 different cameras, but both with the same focal length, and then just kind of bring it all together. Maybe, possibly, 40mm is the perfect everyday lens for me. Maybe I like it more than 35. Maybe I like it more than 50. I don't know that it's going to replace 28. I have another video coming out about more of my 28 adventures as time goes on, but I think there's something to the 40mm lens focal length that is really special, and I'm glad to see that it's having a bit of a comeback. So let's start at the beginning. My story begins with the Ricoh GR IIIx. So on our first trip, this seemed to be the ultimate sort of dad cam, right? Like, it's small, check. It's lightweight, it's check. It has a pretty good lens, check. It can fit in a fanny pack, check. It takes good pictures, check. It's fun, check. All things, all things together, all things good. And so I took this one camera with me, and that was it, just the one. And every image that I captured on that first trip came from this one camera. So I'm going to go ahead and show you those images now, and then when I come back, we'll talk a little bit more about this camera. Okay, so as you can see, the Ricoh GR IIIx is a perfectly capable camera. I love the size of this. I love how unobtrusive it is, how easy it is to just kind of carry this with you anywhere. But there are some downsides to a camera like this. One, it's not full frame and it doesn't have the fastest lens. It's a 40mm 2.8 lens, which for most point and shoot things, anything outside, I found this perfectly fine. But there were a few instances where it was where it would have been nice to have a slightly larger sensor that could, take images at a higher ISOs, and also at the same time to have a lens that was just a tad bit faster. So that's one strike against the Ricoh GR IIIx. Two, it is a point and shoot, which, depending on whoever is using this, will either love that or hate that, right? So the first plus is its size. It's also a con in the sense that if you're used to shooting with cameras of any kind, you'll find that it's very small and the ergonomics are very, very small, and it functions like a point and shoot, an advanced point and shoot nevertheless, but it is a point and shoot first. It's fully capable, and for most people, I think if you're not like a photographer type, but you're just into cool gear that takes really great images, this will be the ultimate dad cam. But for me, I just felt it to be a little confining, we'll say. And then the last strike against this is the autofocus is a little spot on. Sometimes it's hard to hit. I find personally, for something like this where I'm like taking pictures of my kids and I just want to get the image really fast, I need like pretty good autofocus or like IAF or whatever. Either that or completely opposite, use a manual camera and zone focus, which I find to be equally as adequate. And I know you can do some zone focusing with this a little bit. You can kind of snap to focus and do all that kind of stuff, but it really does kind of focus a little slower. And so those are the three strikes against it. Again, a great camera. I'm on the fence on whether or not I want to keep it or get rid of it because I haven't used it so much in the past couple months, and I feel guilty about that. I almost feel like someone else should have something like this. So if that's you and you're interested in a Ricoh GR IIIx, send me a message and we'll see what I can come up with. So the second time we went, again, the same parameters, right? Can I fit it in this? And I had recently purchased the camera that I'm filming this on right now, which is the Lumix S9 for making videos. Like the whole idea was like to make videos and film my daughter's dance recital. And you can kind of see at the very beginning of my YouTube channel, a couple little clips that I just did with filming my kids. But I started taking pictures with it just out of for fun. And I realized this is actually a really capable camera and really good. And the JPEGs are actually really fantastic, just like the Ricoh. The Ricoh has really amazing JPEGs. But the Lumix, because it has the sort of internal LUT feature, has some really beautiful images straight out of the camera as well too. And maybe I could take just this one body and get just as good of results, or maybe even better, right? Because it's full frame. It has small lenses like with Sigma, and the one that I chose, which is the TTArtisan 40mm. I mean, look how tiny this is. Maybe this would be the ultimate camera. And so before I go any further into that, let me show you the images from the second trip, and you can weigh in your thoughts on that as well too. Okay, so you can see the Lumix S9 is a perfectly capable camera. I will give you all the cons that almost every YouTuber will give you. It doesn't have a mechanical shutter and it doesn't have an EVF. But if you're thinking of it from a perspective of making videos first, or if you're coming at it from like upgrading from a point and shoot size camera, I don't see those as necessarily cons. They're pros. The only time I had an issue with the electronic shutter was like once, and it still produced a good image, so I kept with it. But you can see it's a pretty capable camera. What made this whole package small enough to fit into this little tiny bag was A, I didn't have a grip on it, and B, I took this one lens, which is the TTArtisan 40mm f2 lens. So everything you saw was with that combination. Lumix S9, TTArtisan 40mm f2, and the only other thing that I have on there is a 1/8 glimmer glass, which kind of gives it that shimmery look, that sort of like those highlights, that sort of bloom. And this was awesome. It was fantastic. Basically, that camera has now sort of replaced how I was using this GR IIIx. And I've enjoyed just taking this one camera, one lens, and just shooting things for fun, right? Just for having fun. But that got me thinking when I started looking back at those images, how 40mm kind of all together might actually be the perfect focal length for most everything. So I want to park here on this idea for a minute. Maybe a good in-between 35 and 50 is 40 to 45. And maybe a 40 could replace both of those lenses for me. Again, for the longest time, I shot with this Voigtlander 40mm 1.4 on my Leica, and that was all I used. And I never felt like I was missing shots. Likewise, when I had a Canon 6D, I had one of the little pancake 40s that they used to have, and I love that lens too. And then this TTArtisan and this Ricoh GR III remind me that, well, 40 or the 40mm equivalent is kind of all I need. It's not so wide that it feels distorted. It's also not too cropped that it feels like a telephoto, which that's how 50 kind of feels for me. And so I realized after looking through those pictures that 40mm for me really is kind of like my ideal 50. Like, I actually don't like 50mm lenses. I've tried it on every camera system, and I have to be honest, I always feel like it's a little more in the telephoto lens. And if that's the case, I'd rather jump to 85 or 75 or 90. And so I've always gravitated towards 35. But maybe this 40mm could actually be my combo. So what I'm doing now, I've been shooting film this past week because I got a Konica Hexar RF. And I have not developed any of the negatives yet. So when I do, that'll be my next video. But I've been pretty much leaving my 28mm on there. But I've also been carrying around this 40mm as my combo, 28 and 40. And I think this is a great combination. 28 is wide enough to do most of everyday kind of shooting. 40 is that mix, that good mix of like wide and closeness, and it's very natural feeling. And I think this is a great sort of alternative to the 28. So for me, for the year, I'm giving up on the 28-50 idea, and instead I'm going to do 28 and 40. Again, though, maybe that's because 40mm is actually a more perfect focal length altogether. I was, as all of you know, Leica released the Q3 43, which has a 43mm apochromatic lens, which in their, their verbiage, it's essentially as close to like the natural train of, the natural eye's perspective as possible. And I think there's something to that. When I used to shoot medium format, I had this big clunky camera called a Kiev 60, and I had a Zeiss 80mm lens that I used on it. I'll show you some images. Okay, yeah, looking at those images, right? There was something about that 80mm focal length that just felt really natural on a 6x6 format. It felt very right. It just felt very natural. And we've often equated that with a 50mm, but it turns out that that's actually closer to 43 or 44, 45. And so 40 is a little on the wider side, but nevertheless, it's kind of like right where natural is in our perspective. It feels wide enough. It also doesn't feel too cropped. And maybe, possibly, it is kind of the perfect focal length. And so I'm happy that 40 millimeters is having a bit of a moment. Let me give you a list of all the 40 millimeter lenses that I found, or roughly 40 millimeter, that you can check out today. There's the TTArtisan, which is not expensive, and you should totally check this lens out. There's a Sony. Canon has a 45-1.2, Sigma has a 45-2.8, Voigtlander has the 40 millimeter 1.4. They also have a 40 millimeter 1.2, which is available in a bunch of different mounts. There's a new 7 Artisans 40 millimeter coming out. There's the Ricoh GR IIIx. If you want to get an old camera like the Canon QL17 40 millimeter lens, like a Q3 43, and I'm probably missing several other 40 millimeter options out there. But I think 40 millimeter is a wonderfully good perspective that we can look through. And if you don't believe me, maybe listen to your favorite cinematographer. Roger Deakins shot an entire film, or 97% of a film, on the 40 millimeter equivalent, which was 1917. It's his sort of preferred perspective. And I think there's something really wonderful about 40 millimeter. So you should check out a 40 millimeter lens, and maybe it'll be your new favorite focal length as well too. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe. I'll see you next time. Go in peace.